Yes, people, we are back again. Welcome back to 12th Man. Welcome back to the channel. It's another Potsy Meets. And do you know what? We've got someone on who I've spoken to for a while and wanted to get on for some time. And I've never found the time to be able to. So I'm absolutely delighted to bring him on today. We've got John sitting in the house. We can't see him, but we can certainly hear him. John, can you hear me, mate?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Dan. Yeah, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, man. And
No
I know
worries.
you're a busy man, so I wanted to get you on for some time and just get some opinions and just talk about football with you, mate. Because I know you and
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
very opinionated, and I like that. And I'm very opinionated myself, so it's good to get someone on that I can talk to in that respect. And I know we can't see you, but we can hear you loud and clear, which is brilliant. So
Well, you did
I
say
wanted.
I had a face for radio, so I don't think it's anyone's loss. You know what I mean? It's like 50, 52 years and counting
Yeah, mate.
with a banter. With regards to being 12th man, the only time I was ever 12th man was when I was coming back from injury or suspension. So this is a first for me.
Right, listen, I love it. It's great to have you on, man, and a big fan. So appreciate you jumping on. I know the viewers will be really happy that you're here as well. Make sure you do me a favor, people, hit like and subscribe. Make sure you get us up to the big 60,000 subs is the next. So let's make sure we get there together. Look, John, I want to talk first of all. I know a lot about you and a bit about your kind of past, but there might be some of the younger viewers that might not. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to have a little bit of an introduction into your time in football. I know that obviously as a youngster, Arsenal, Chelsea, went to Chelsea and then got into the kind of Leyton Orient side of things and ended up managing them. And just wanted to get a bit of a kind of intro to how you got into football and your time at those clubs, mate, if I could.
Yeah, well, a different era, obviously. I was involved at a pro level in and around a professional environment from around about 1972 onwards. I was 12. I was training with the under-14s at Arsenal. Dare I say it was much more sort of organic then. Although I was reading a book by a mate of mine who played at Man United, Alan Tonge, and at the back it's got about because he's got a PhD now, and he's got a doctorate, and he lectures in different things. He got a bad injury after being let go by Man United, and it takes a certain person with a certain makeup to be able to make it in any era. So I'm quite proud of that. But Arsenal, with their exacting standards, they let me go after 8 months, 10 months, actually 10 months. I had what they call Osgood Schlatter, which I was going through a debilitating growth spurt injury. And I played through the pain, which is where the 8 comes in. I played through the pain for about 8 months. Then got all the representative honours, you know what I mean? So you start with your school and your youth club, and then district, then county, then London, then went to England at Loughborough at the time. And I had a choice of 10 clubs. And Arsenal were actually a club who wanted me back. They were one of 10 clubs who wanted me to sign schoolboy from the age of 13, actually. You signed schoolboy at 14, but everyone was getting primed just after their 13th birthday. And even as an Arsenal supporter, brought up as an Arsenal supporter, I just said to me, Dad, no, F them. I said they had their chance, which was a bit churlish for a kid. And but probably the fact that my personality was starting to form already. Yeah. And anyway, I'd done the rounds, had turned down money, turned down, you know, all these. I don't know what you call it. Basically, these sort of procurements, you know, for signing, and there was a lot of money floating about at certain clubs, and I turned it down because I didn't realise it until recently. But I signed for Chelsea. I loved it. I loved the atmosphere. There was a good vibe. It was a club that gave youth its chance. They'd just come off the back of quite a bit of success. So I'm talking, I signed 74. Although they started to break up all the chaps like that, Peter Osgood, who I got to play with when he came back to the club for a second time. Footballing gods like him and Alan Hudson, and Charlie Cook, who I played with when I was captain of the reserve side. Peter Bonetti, Ronnie Harris, Mickey Droy, who was a gentle giant, John Dempsey, all people like that, sort of from that era of being in the top echelons of what would now be the Premier League. and obviously they beat Leeds in that infamous cup final after a replay. Then they won the European Cup Winners' Cup the following year against Real Madrid after a replay. Then they got to the League Cup final the following year, got beaten by Stoke. So I thought, they promote their youngsters, and I signed for Chelsea. But I'm not realising until recently, as I went off at a tangent there, that it was in the which I've got to address in my second book. It was amidst the it was the epicenter of the child sex abuse allegations, child sex abuse scandal. Anyway, just trying to keep it a bit lighter. I signed apprentice in '76. I was offered a 4-year pro deal at the age of 17 and a half. I elected to sign a 2-year deal on my 18th birthday. I was captain of reserves at 18, first team at 19, and out the club at 20. After a fallout with my, it was 7th manager in 6 seasons, including 2 caretaker stints by Ron Stewart. But I loved it there, and I had 5 good years out of 6. And like a lot of things as I reflect through my life, because I'm 66 next month, and you tend to get to a certain stage in your life, which no doubt you will yourself, and you start to reflect. And a lot of the chances I've had, I haven't realised until they've slipped by, or I've shot myself, pressed the self-destruct button and shot myself in the foot.
Yeah, look, I mean, if I'm honest with you, I'm 37 and I'm looking back like you are now, thinking, why? And I'm only 37, so I can only think if I do get touched with into my late 60s, like my dad's 66 now. I'm looking at that thinking, what am I going to be thinking when I look back at that? And sometimes I think you've got to, I don't know, maybe you just can't look like that. Maybe you've got to look about what you've done and what you haven't done. Do you know what I mean? And there's going to be stuff that everyone do, even the stuff that you might think, I wish I would have done that. I wish I wouldn't have done that. There'll be something else that you would say, maybe I wish I wouldn't have done that as well. So that's the kind of way I look at it, man. But obviously in your playing career, you then went famously into the kind of Leyton Orient setup.
There was. I had a run in Chelsea's first team, Dan, and
yeah.
It's one thing I can't get my head around. I mean, I was a 19-year-old centre back trying to make me way. I had 14 games, and I had 11 good ones, 1 mediocre one, and 2 bad ones. And I got hammered by the crowd because, they were just looking for someone to blame. We'd sold the family silver, as in Ray Wilkins, $850 to Man United. Eddie McCready had left the club after getting promotion, and he literally got blood out of a stone on a very strict budget. The hierarchy had their pants pulled down with the New East Stand. Went over budget. I mean, the year I signed, I didn't realise because I watch all the old games on YouTube, and I sort of flip between boxing and football, and it actually said that every member of staff in the summer of '76 had to take a pay cut or took a pay cut, be it voluntary or involuntary. You know what I mean? At Chelsea, which was the year I signed apprentice. So we was already on a bit of a rocky road. Then you hear the stories of, I've done podcasts with Alan Hudson and Don Shanks, ex-QPR and Luton, and behind the scenes we're talking, and Alan said, well, one of the reasons they sold me in Ozzy, we had a fallout. Ozzy had a fallout, I think, with Dave Sexton, and then there was a couple of other rumblings, and there was promises of signing on fees to Uddy, and they reneged on it. So he said, well, I'm going. And he went to Stoke, but he said it also helped the fact that they got something like a combined 700 grand or 600 odd grand for the two of them that went towards the stand, which was budgeted at 2 million, and then went vastly over budget. So then fast forward to my era, and just above me was the likes of Ray Wilkins, went to Man United, 850. Gary Stanley went to Everton for 400. Kenny Swain, who was he played wide right, he played up front, he played midfield. He ended up being the European Cup winning fullback at Villa. He went there for 100 grand, something like that. Steve Wicks, centre back, value added premium, 6'3", sweet left foot, good defender. He went to Derby for 250. So you're looking at 1.6 with M4, I think, give or take. 1.65. So, it was to keep the club ticking over. So then my youth coach left his post and went, and it tipped the club upside down. He ended up first team manager for 10 months. That was Ken Chiletto, after Eddie McCready left. Then Danny Blanchflower had a stint. One of the nicest football men I've ever met. One of the nicest people I've ever met. And I'm not just saying it because he gave me a debut with Ron Stewart as his number 2. Ron had 2 caretaker stints. And very quickly, the other managers were like Dave Sexton, Eddie Mack, Ron Stewart, caretaker, Ken Shiletto, Ron Stewart, caretaker. Then he stepped down to be a number 2 to Danny. And then Danny himself was number 6, Sir Jeff Hurst, number 7. Jeff Hurst at the time, not Sir Jeff.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I had a little run there and then had a fallout with Sir Jeff. Turned out, really, I've got to probably concede that he was right.
What'd you fall out about?
Well, we got caught in a pub on a Friday by Bobby Gould, but no one was drinking. It was just tradition. You'd come out of the main gate, turn left before the development of the ground. The bridge didn't look like the bridge that we see today. Right. As is Stamford Bridge, obviously, but there was a pub on the left called the Black Bull, and all the pros and the apprentices used to go together en masse. There was between, I think it was about 40. I was number 40, and I remember Reg Byatt, the kit man, saying that was Ray Wilkins' old number, which I was quite proud of. I was an apprentice. We used to go down there. It wouldn't be on the menu today. What you got to understand, there was none of this chefs and like an immaculate training ground.
No.
We didn't even have our own training ground, and like white tablecloths and cutlery, and queue up and have a choice of like fish or chicken and vegetables, etc. We went down the Black Bull, had cottage pie, chips and beans, and a blackcurrant lemonade, and a game of darts or a game of pool. And Bobby pokes his head round the door one Friday. "What you lot doing in here?" I piped up. There was me, Mickey Nutton, who I broke into the first team with, Jimmy Clare, who passed away recently, bless him. Lee Frost, Clive Walker, Mickey Fillery, Gary Chivers, Chris Sully. He said, "Right, manager's office, 3 o'clock." I said, "Bob, we're just having a game of pool and a bite to eat before we go home." I said, "Well, what are we going to do? Go home and watch Little House on the Prairie?" I said, "Like, it's just, you know what I mean?" Some of us even used to go to the cinema. There was no double sessions. We turn up at Jeff's office. They come in a bit like the Ark 2x2, but I was left on my own. Get called into the office. You think it's going to be good cop, bad cop. It was bad cop, bad cop. You're an effing disgrace. You've just been sent off against Arsenal in the football combination. Because we used to have some battles there, and it's very much a myth. I mean, the high-achieving clubs. Don't forget, I used to stand on the North Bank every home game with my dad, and I put it in my book. Some tackles by Peter Storey, they'd be regarded as GBH on the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I bet.
So it was the hypocrisy of that, because a lot of high-achieving clubs, when they're getting beat, they start putting it about. Trust me. Believe me, they do. Even up to the Adams Bold era. And it seems to me one of the great coaches and great managers of all time at the Arsenal, George Graham, he seems to be very much forgotten now. And it's crying out for someone
criminal
like him who could come, because the defending now is just a borderline joke, I've got to tell you. Not at Arsenal in particular, not at Arsenal, but just at some clubs. When I look at it, the setup, what they do, how they go to the ground, how they don't get within blocking distance, how they don't track runners, how they mark in the box. I mean, it's laughable, you know what I mean? And George would never have stood for that. But anyway, sticking to the point, we go 1-0 up against Arsenal. We ended up winning 1-0. They start putting it about. We're getting free kicks all over the place. I'll do a quick spot the ball to take a quick one. Arsenal player kicks the ball away. I'll give him a bit of verbal. Referee books him for not backing off and kicking the ball away. I'll spot the ball quickly again. There's handbags at 10 paces because Jimmy Clare's nutmegged someone again. And Arsenal are like just lumping everyone up in the air. One of my teammates gives a player a bit of verbal. Not very nice. Would probably get reported to the FA now. Arsenal player goes past and I got spat at. So I forgot. I said on numerous interviews, I wouldn't have give a fuck if it was Muhammad Ali. I'd have chinned him. No one spits at me. So the half-time whistle goes. We go into the team talk. I'm not even listening to the team talk. I just want to assault an Arsenal player. And so we kick off. And unfortunately, it was Paul who he never spat at me, but he never spoke to me for years. And he tried to top me in a testimonial game for Buster. What was his name? Bill Collins at Gillingham. Gillingham v Arsenal, when he tried to top me in a testimonial game as retribution. But it weren't Paul, but I just thought anyone would do. I got a straight red card. Back to the office. I got a letter off of Terry Neal, blah, blah, blah. I just said, like, do me a favour, Bob. I said, I saw you at Arsenal. You made a living out of leaving your footing on fullbacks and centre backs who were playing the long ball forward. I said, you couldn't score in a brothel on a stag night in Thailand. I said, you know what I mean? So then Jeff, you're an integral part of the drinking culture at this club. I said, well, I'm not. So he said, well, we've heard that you've got too much to say for yourself and you're not fit enough and there's too many players in the club not fit enough, which was a sweeping generalisation. It's what they normally say when they can't think of what to do, because I was used to like patterns of play and drilling the back four or the back six or the back eight, set pieces, throw-ins, combination play, rehearsing combination play in the middle and attacking thirds, crossing and finishing drills, shooting drills, small-sided games. And all they did was ran the nuts off of us for 9 months, or the 8 that I was left there. And he said, well, if you're not an integral part of the drinking culture, he said, you tell me who is, or you suffer the consequences. So I think I'm going to get a slap on the wrist. I'm going to get a fine, a severe reprimand. I said, look, Jeff, you played for West Ham. I said, I'm born in the East End and you expect me to be a grass. So I said to him, no chance. He went, okay. So I look at him and I'm thinking, well, here it comes, 2 weeks' wages. Whatever. He said, in that case, starting Monday, he said, you train at Stamford Bridge on your own until I get you out of the club. And that's what happened.
Wow.
So for the next 9 days, so I had to report Monday. He used me as an example to basically for everyone else to fall in line. And then all that week, including Mickey Droy, who said the training, he said it's an effing joke. Yeah, I mean, I remember I did an interview with Johnny Vaughan and I said, well, he's just laying on the grass, chewing a bit of grass. And we were getting beat by third man runs in a practice match. Mickey Droy's going, oh, this has got to be an effing joke. He's bollocking Johnny Bumpstead and people like that. Mickey Fillery. We're getting picked off. We can't squeeze up. And then we were basically we were drilled by Brian Eastick. Jeff says, get Brian over, because he couldn't do it. So Johnny Vaughan said, well, I suppose you can do that when you score that trick in a World Cup final, albeit like, sort of one level above park football at the time. He says you can do that when you score that trick in a World Cup final. So I should have replied, well, not when you're meant to be educating young players, drilling a team to be organised and trying to win football matches. You should have. I always believed in what Don Howe said. The manager should be the best coach in the club, because you've got to have someone to aspire to, look up to, someone to go to, someone who you lean on, someone who you get advice from. And that weren't the case. Anyway, the following week, and then up to the Thursday of the week after, I was training on my own, got a call, went to negotiate with Dario Gradi, who'd left the club, because I was used to coaches like him, and Ken Shilato, Eddie Mack, and he wanted me to sign, and I just about to do a deal with him at Wimbledon, and then Millwall came in. Yeah. And I went and had a chat with George Patchy, and he's without a doubt all the managers I played for, the nicest man, the nicest human being, and the best manager I ever played under.
Wow.
So I signed for Millwall.
But then you had Peter Anderson that came in and took a bit of a disliking to you.
Who knows why? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, terrible. You know what I mean? Like a bit of nous, football intelligence, ability, a renewed sense of vigour, re-energised, scored on me, I think my second game at home, or it might be my own debut against Oxford. And we're talking the Oxford team that went through the divisions and beat whoever they beat to win the Milk Cup. We beat them 3-0 at home. I got the second. Bullet header in the top corner. That was at the old Den. Went through 3 50-50s in the centre circle. And the gaff erupted like we won the European Cup. Got sold short. Blue light on the ball, as in like it was an hospital ball. And Geezer's come in. I've gone through him, crunch. Ball squirmed out, got up quick. Second 50-50 with a midfield player, gone through him, crunch. Ball squirmed out. You're going to think I'm lying, but I remember it to this day. Got up quickly, went through a third 50-50 with a defender, crunch, went through him, ball squirmed out. Now I'm cream crackered. I just rolled a ball short to someone, Dave Memmett or Nicky Chatterton. I just needed a breather, and the gaff erupted like we won European Cup. So what I showed is, like, you know, I had a bit of heart and commitment to go with me football intelligence and ability, which was only going to get better because I'd literally just turned 20. George was taken poorly. The results weren't. I think they invested a little bit in the team, the likes of John Mitchell from Fulham, Johnny Lyons from Wrexham, Bobby Shinton on loan from Wrexham again. People at the back like Mel Blythe, Johnny Jackson in goal. And I was caught in that juxtaposition between the FA Youth Cup winning side that were being blooded into the first team and were deemed good enough to make it, and a lot of experience around me. Nicky Chatterton in midfield, who was a breath of fresh air, because after Ray Wilkins left, no one at Chelsea wanted the ball, and he was just available all the time, wanted the ball all the time, demanding the ball all the time. Great athlete, great competitor, technically very good. I mean, you look at him on YouTube scoring goals at Stamford Bridge for Palace in the FA Cup. I think it was the 5th round when we got beat 3-2 at home. I was sitting there in the stands as an apprentice. Yeah, so it's a crying shame, you know, and it taught me the real meaning of you know, fate and destiny. But then George was taken poorly. I don't know what it was, whether it was his heart or whether it was a stroke. He had a problem with his vision. One eye sort of was virtually closed. But very much a humanist in the mould of Arsene Wenger. You know, he could put you at your, he put you at your ease. Player welfare was paramount. He was always checking on you to make sure you was all right, you was comfortable, you was happy with your life, you were content. Is there anything else we can do for you? I just loved him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like Eddie Mack, who I never got the chance to play for. I'd have just run through brick walls for him. And like I say, he was taken ill. There was a thing. I started off at right back at the Valley. We'd done them 2-0 at home. We were playing Charlton, so it was a local derby. I got man of the match, actually.
Yep.
Someone went off injured, Mel Blythe probably again. And I was put at centre back, which was my best position anyway, but I could play right back. I could also play as one of a three. I could also, I had a few games in midfield. So I was like, when I came out of my shell and when I asserted myself and when I started to pump up, I was like a former day John Stones, where I could, you know,
Yep.
probably not at that level as an athlete, but and in terms of size, but I could basically play in any position. I did salt once at left back against Southend when Keith Peacock took the piss out of me, which we might come to.
Yeah.
But there was a caretaker thing with Terry Long, who was George's assistant, and Roger Cross, who went on to be at West Ham with Harry Redknapp. He was the youth coach, so they were running the first team. And then this geezer appears from nowhere. Or when I say nowhere, he was living in Tampa in Florida. He'd gone from Luton, where he knew the chairman from, Lenny Eppel. He went to play in Belgium, and he ended up in America on the American gravy train. And then the next thing you know, he's come back and he's managing Millwall. And for whatever reason, he took it was bad timing. It coincided with me getting a suspension from the FA. Like when you accumulated 5 bookings in those days, you got automatically suspended.
Right.
He come up to plead me case and whatever. Then he said, like, I think you're doing fantastic. Your conduct's been exemplary. You're a good trainer. And then within a couple of weeks, he said, look, I'm looking to change things around. He said, like, we've got too many older players here. We've got too many people in a rut. And I said, well, I can't be classed as an older player. I'm 20. I said, I'm not in a rut. I've just literally just arrived. Now, when I arrived, you've got to bear in mind, George Petchy said to me, well, we want you to sign a 3-year deal. He said, but if you want, he said, I want you here as part of the Mill's long-term futures. I'll sign a 4-year deal, a 5-year deal. He said, it's up to you. So I said, George, if it's up to me, can I, with the wages on offer, I said, Wimbledon have offered me a signing on fee. He said, we'll match that. I said, well, can I sign for 2 years? Like I did at Chelsea. They offered me 4 years. And I said, well, with the money you're offering me, I'm not much better off than what I was with my apprentice money. Me expenses and me keep. I said, so can I sign for 2 years instead? So Ron Sutton cancelled. I said, okay, if that's how you feel. I said, well, it is. I said, because the bottom line is, I said, it's barely it's a living wage, but it's barely more than that. I said, and I want a chance to renegotiate if and when I break into the first team. Well, I broke into the first team, but then I went Charlie big time, didn't I? I had an attitude problem. This is where Jeff and Bobby have been proved right, and I'll have to hold my hands up. I learned further down the line that I needed to have every single thing going for me, which means I had to be on top of my game. I had to train well every day. I had to keep on top of my fitness, none of which I was doing. I had a poor attitude. And the same at Millwall. I elected to sign 2 years. So if I'd have elected to sign 4 years, Jeff would have come and gone, and I'd have still been there. If I'd have signed 4 years at Millwall, then Anderson would have come and gone, and I'd have still been there. But it weren't the case. So the next thing you know, so I know they're talking to this geezer Allardyce. Well, in his book, Sam says he got a better offer from Millwall than he got from clubs in the 2 divisions above. So he went for the money.
Wow.
And he come to Millwall, and I was off to Gillingham under Keith Peacock. And it's one of them I describe in my book, Dan.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a hastily arranged barbecue or dinner party, or
Many times.
Like drinks party, or a night out with the lads, or a night out with your wife and your mates and their wives, and it turns out to be one of the best nights out you've ever had? And then that would explain the first 2 years at Gillingham, because it was very, and then I said, have you ever had an arranged night at the theatre, or dinner, or a party that you've been looking forward to, or a social occasion like an engagement or a wedding, or a barbecue that everyone's invited to, and it turned out to be a damp squib? That would explain the second 2 years at Gillingham.
That's a shame. That's a shame, man.
But that's down to Peacock. I mean, like he's a pygmy. He's a pygmy pseudo intellectual. His claim to fame is like it's a Trivial Pursuit question. He was the first sub ever used in the Football League. Over 700 appearances for Charlton. But after great service, fantastic ability, appetite for training, I was travelling from Edmonton in North London all the way to Gillingham every day. There were no concessions about the travelling. You got to come in every day. Even made me come in on Christmas Day once when it was snowing.
Wow.
He then goes out and he buys a right back with dodgy knees and a blind as a back called Joe Innigan, and a centre back, Keith Oakes, who made me look like a cross between Valerie Boltsoff and Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? In terms of being quick and better spring and all the rest of it. Yeah. I mean, I'd spent 2 years alongside Brucey. We made each other look good. Steve Bruce, virtually impregnable. I mean, the first year we just missed out on promotion. A couple of silly results, where you drop a point at home, or you might have taken the lead away from home and end up drawing, and it ends up costing you.
So you spent 4 years at Gillingham. You said obviously he made you look silly. You'd put you at left back or something. What was all that about then?
Exactly. He's going out. He started collecting centre backs. I said, what's going on here? Now, the irony is, in the interim period, like coming towards the end of my second year, Brentford made an offer for me. And the Brentford assistant manager and player coach was Ron Harris, my ex-Chelsea colleague. Right. And then we're playing them at home, and Chris Matthews is the secretary there, who used to be the secretary at Chelsea. She walks in, gives me a hug. She winks at me, gives me a little peck on the cheek. Robbo walks in, my ex-teammate at Millwall, went, "Sit, son, how's it going?" I went, "All right, Robbo." He said, "He fancies you." He said, listen, he said he's going to be putting an offer in. I said, "Really?" I heard nothing. Then I get called into the office, and Keith Peacock says, "Do you know anything about this?" I said, "Absolutely no idea." And I'll swear to you on any oath, I had no clue. But anyway, now what it would have meant that the tiny little fee they gave Millwall, the tiny signing on fee that he gave me, as opposed to the decent signing on fees he gave to ex-Charlton teammates, but the tiny little signing on fee he gave me and my wages would have all been covered, and he'd have made a profit on top after 2 years service. So what's not to love? You go to the board, you say, "Look, I've got our money back. I've got his signing on fee back. His wages have cost us nothing. We've had 2 years decent service out of it. I'm going to let him go. Job done. Then I can come back to London and we all get on with our life." Instead of which, at the time, no such thing as a Bosman, he offered me the same money again. right? Which
Right.
means contractually he had a hold over me, and I couldn't leave the football club. And then he spent 2 years literally fucking me about, which I'll never forgive him for. And then I ended up 8 years on the same money, because then he palms me off to, he don't even have the courtesy to pick a phone up or invite me in for a chat. At the end of my 4th year, he just tells Frank Clark over the phone, you can have him. And then Clark, he says, he plays the kidology thing. Now I'm like up the creek without a paddle. And he says, I'll take a punt on you for a couple of £100. I have to laugh. He recently reached out to me last year. Come and stay with me and my wife, Pamela. Bring your missus up. We'll have a long weekend in Nottingham, wherever he lives. I said, no, fucking no chance. Not after the way you treated me. You took the piss out of me. I'll take a punt. Now, they've just had 2 relegations in 3 years. And he's taking a punt on me. You know, then to add insult to injury, right? Or to add, I don't know whether it's irony, I don't know whether it's an oxymoron, I don't know what it is. He makes me captain for the next 6 years. Wow. So I'm one of his best defenders, one of his best players. He's captain, and I'm the lowest paid player in the club. Fucking work that one out.
Hey, that makes no sense, does it? Because you were there 6 years, weren't you, at Leyton Orient?
Well, I was there 10, 6 as a player, 4 as a coach.
4 as a coach.
So I was coaching for the FA for 9 years as a coach educator. And then because I was like, after I was let go by Peter Eustace in 91, I coached at the academy for 2 years, when I should have just broke off from the club and gone and tried to get a job at an academy elsewhere, because I was a good coach and I was only going to get better. And so I had 2 years in the academy. Then I heard they was letting the youth coach go, so I applied for that. And I ended up getting the job after being on a shortlist with Chris Hutton and another ex-Orient player, Kevin Howes. I blitzed that, and then we turned everything right round, because the second-year apprentices, they'd wasted a couple of years under the previous guy who couldn't handle them. They'd had no education. Then we were getting hidings from the likes of Spurs and Arsenal and Chelsea. You've got to appreciate, they've literally got the pick of any kid in London, and then we're left with what's left over. And then what was good was, having coached some of the players in the Centre of Excellence, what would now be called an academy, signed them apprentice, worked with them for a year, we turned all those results around. We knocked Chelsea out the FA Youth Cup. We beat Arsenal. We drew 0-0 at home with 10 men. We beat them away at London Colney 2-0. We turned a massive hammering from Spurs into a 2-2 draw in the return after taking the lead 2-0. So we were making progress. Then I get the call I wish I'd never have taken. We're in trouble. Sits, can you come and take the first team?
That's incredible, though, isn't it? I mean, like, look, when anyone mentions your name, they all talk about you. You know, they don't really talk about what they should talk about, which is what we've just talked about now. Everyone straight away goes, "Oh, John Sitton, legendary, he ran, unbelievable. Everyone's seen it." And like, let's be real. You say you wish you wouldn't have. Like, what is your kind of thing looking back at that now? Like, I mean, it's absolutely epic in terms of the actual run itself in the training ground. You've obviously skipped over your time at Leyton Orient, really, which I think is probably where 6 years, you'd say you're probably the longest. You got your 174 appearances I'm looking at now, is 7 goals. And then obviously you go into, from there, you're at Slough, and then you go to Leyton Orient as a kind of the manager there, taking over. Looking back at that now, that rant, like, I love it. I think it's class, because I think it's raw, it's passionate, it's from the heart, and I think it's class, and everybody would agree with me. But what has your life been like since then, like moving forward? Because people always talk about it, don't they, Sits? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's right. But okay, I'll give you my honest opinion now. I know I was better than that. I do agree with you. It was from the heart, because it was. That's how I am. That's how I trained. That's how I played.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of thinking people would approach training and playing the way I did. Right. Even if we were down to, see, what you've got to realise is, the summer I took over 90, leading up to the summer 93, 94. I'd been youth coach for nearly a year.
Yeah.
And I got the call. I'll get home. So my routine, which Eustace was taking the piss, 2 £280 a week. So Monday all day with the youth team, because I bought in a culture shock. You're going to train morning and afternoon. With regards to the duties, we'll keep them to a minimum. I will also muck in and help you. So I was back to being an apprentice at Chelsea, helping them like sweep the dressing rooms,
Wow.
clean the baths, all that, because I wanted them to go home and put their feet up. And, it was about maxing out the time that we could train and keeping the duties to a minimum. So I decided to muck in, right? So that was that. That was Monday. Monday night, I'd be at the Centre of Excellence. Tuesday, same again. Tuesday night, if there's a first team game at home, we've all got a report and we've got to do the duties and the cleaning up after. That's after a full day's training. Wednesday, same again. And Wednesday night, there would be a reserve team game, which inevitably I was involved as a coach. Thursday, they would have a day off, but I had to come in and fill in the reports, which was YTS scheme. So you had to fill in progress reports on a weekly basis. Thursday night, I'd be at the Centre of Excellence. So I'm hanging around the ground. I'll maybe go for a jog, do a few stretches, getting ready to go to the Centre of Excellence and coach anything from under 16 to under 11. Friday, we turn up. Inevitably, the manager would want to use the youth team as passive opposition to rehearse what the first team are going to do. Then after that, I would say, right, well, now we've got to do our session and we've got to get ready for the game tomorrow. Right. So we'd do that, do the duties, go home. Saturday, we'd turn up, play the youth team game. Sunday, I would be asked to come in and work with the injuries, the players who hadn't played, players coming back from injury to try and improve their fitness, or give them a little blast if they hadn't been selected. So I was working 7 days a week for £280 before tax, right? So then 93, 94, okay, I don't know if you remember this and your listeners, the divisions were being restructured because they were cutting the Premiership down to a new Premier League of 20. Down from 22. Down from 22. Well, what happened was that had a knock-on effect through the divisions. And in our division, we were 5th or 6th from bottom. And in our division, 4 were going to be relegated. So I returned from the Centre of Excellence one Thursday night. And my missus is like, are you all right? So I said, yeah. She goes, you have a good session? I said, yeah, it was fantastic. So I said, we had a good, the boys were good tonight. We enjoyed it. And you try and make it enjoyable while giving out good information, depending on the age group. I'm a great believer in the younger they are, the more you should just let them enjoy it and then gradually introduce stuff, right? She goes, the phone ain't stopped ringing. So I went, well, from who? What's happened? So she said, I think they've sacked Eustace. She said, and all the different members of the board, they've been ringing you, right? Anyway, the phone rings inevitably about 9 o'clock. Peter's gone. We want you to take the first team tomorrow. Sits, we need you. We could get relegated. Anyway, we go in. There's a big thing in the next day. Bernie Dixon, who's passed away recently this year. Everyone was at his funeral. Unbelievable turnout. Lovely man. He says, I want you to stay with the youth team and the youth setup. He said, so the vice chairman, Derek Weinrabe, he says, no, we need him with the first team. He said it's a shambles. He said, I'll tell you exactly what happened. He said, with Eustace, he said, look, have you got confidence in me to finish the job, gentlemen? Yes or no? And they said, well, quite frankly, it's a unanimous no. So he said, well, in that case, the next time you speak to me, it'll be through the League Managers Association and my lawyer. He shuffles his papers, pushes his chair back and walks out. Keeps the club Merck, which his son-in-law ended up, or his eldest daughter's boyfriend ended up settling the lease on it and put it on his car front in up north somewhere. He ended up becoming the highest paid gardener in Leyton for the next 15 months. He had 15 months left on his contract. So then I took over and we got the points we needed to stay up. Well, that's when the alarm bell should have rang. Because I think we got 1 win and a draw, or 1 win and 2 draws out of the last 5 games. The first game was away to Huddersfield. Manager was Neil Warnock. We got beat 1-0, but we really outplayed them. But That's when the alarm bell should have rang, because there was no goals, which it's been a common theme from my time at Chelsea through to not so much Millwall, definitely not Millwall, because you had Johnny Lyons, John Mitchell, and a good contribution from the wide players and midfield players, and people like me coming up from set pieces. Gillingham, very much the case. If we'd have had a goal scorer, we would have absolutely run away with the division. Leyton Orient in particular, apart from one season, where Paul Shinner's got about 25 goals. But we had problems scoring. And then that's when the alarm bell should have rang. But loving the club, having been there 10 years, this was me coming up to my 10th year. I took the job on a handshake. The players were canvassed, and they said it's been a breath of fresh air. We feel more comfortable. We feel more organised. It's enjoyable. We want him to have the job. Then I'm told the club's hemorrhaging 10 grand a week for the last 4 years. This will be the 5th year. Ergo, £520,000 per annum. You've got to cut the playing staff from 28 to 15.
Oh my God.
And I ended up with 17, but that included 2 goalkeepers. One of the goalkeepers was my co-manager, Chris Turner.
Oh yeah.
Who actually was struggling with a hernia. So if Paul Hill got injured, we were struggling big time. We wouldn't have had a goalkeeper, because we had to let. There was another kid, Paul something. We had to let Paul Newell. We had to let him go.
Okay.
Yeah. So we literally had 15 outfield players. So I'm going in every board meeting. We need players. We've addressed this part of the club. We've saved 38 grand on the budget at youth level. We've saved We've let a load of scouts go at this level. We've married youth team players to pros who ain't played to form the reserve side. We've made cuts behind the scenes with staff. I've let 13 players go, but I need to replenish the squad. And all I kept getting was from Tony Wood, who was the then chairman. I can't do it anymore. I've underpinned the club's losses for the previous 4 years. I made Frank Clark managing director. We were meant to place the accent on youth. We were meant to build it up like the Orient of the 70s, where they had the Shadozis, the Banjos, the Utons, the Bobby Fishers, the Paddy Grealish, your Mayos, your Roders. You had all them coming through. And he said it hasn't happened. So he said, my business has been decimated. Now, this is what you can right at the start, before I've gone into this like long diatribe, right? There was, it was the start of the Rwandan civil war. And he had a coffee plantation down in Rwanda, right? And that's where he was earning his money. So he was like honorary British consul or honorary British ambassador. He had the plantation. He'd been working 38 years, something like that. He said, and it's been decimated. And he said, my business is finished. It's ruined. It's decimated. And you had this genocide. And I've had people working for me over 30 years. He went back. He had to be smuggled out by the United Nations. He come home. He's shell-shocked. He said, but I've got to go back. And I've got to try and get people out if I can help. I've got to see what's left of my business. He said, and there was literally, he went to me, John, he said, there's people floating face down in my pool. He said, they just ransacked me home. And he said, well, I can't say face down. He said, they would just had their heads cut off and their arms cut off with machetes. He said,
oh, mate,
I've got to be honest. He said, I know you're struggling, but I can't commit to you. He said, because football really, he said, it's nothing compared to this. I said, I agree. I said, I agree. But then you get people come in. I mean, he's just recently been on a podcast, Barry Hearn, to promote his book. Told probably not the first time, probably won't be the last, particularly where I'm concerned, told a blatant lie. Said that he saw me work with the youth team because they went all that like, now today's guest is Barry Hearn, blah, 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 and bring your dinner. Well, they're trying to break the ice and crack a joke and just start off light-hearted and all that. And so tell me, how did you get on with dealing with someone like John Sitton? And then he goes into this thing, well, I saw him work with the youth team. And he said, I looked at it and I just thought, well, that's not me. That's not my style. He said he was a bully. Well, listen, this is the lie. He never, ever, 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 not once saw me work at any level as a coach, whether it's Centre of Excellence / Academy, whether it was the youth team, reserve team or first team, all the jobs that I was doing. I was also ended up being a scout. I don't know why, because the PFA were paying the wages for like 8 months. We were on the brink of administration, and that was going to fast forward to bankruptcy. I was also ended up as commercial manager because we never had the money to pay the milk bill, and I needed money for us to have a coach and an overnight stay in Stockport to fulfil a fixture. When, if with the benefit of hindsight, I should have sat back, relaxed, and said, let the club get fined 30 grand because we can't fulfil the fixture. A club that's losing 10 grand a week, by the way. But the bottom line is this, right? He never saw me work once at any level. And with regards to the dressing down, he obviously didn't understand dressing rooms as they were at the time for the previous 50 years. You know, you listen, they talk about psychology. They talk about it. If someone challenged my professionalism or my commitment or my ego or my pride or my manhood, like Frank Clark did on a weekly basis, to the extent where I'm fed up using Frank, I'm fucking fed up you using me as a verbal punch bag. Sits, I've got to. You're my man in there. He says, if I dig out and he start throwing names about, they would crumble. When they look at you getting man of the match, when they look at you getting player of the month, when they look at you, the way you're playing and how consistent you are, they're thinking, wow, if he's digging Sits out, where does that leave me? So I don't even have to talk to him. I said, yeah, but just tone it down a bit, right?
Yeah.
And leave me alone. All I want to do is be left alone. That's all I said, because I know what I've got to do. I know the game. And you become like a player coach. You know, you're bossing, organising, making sure the structure's implemented, which is, I'm looking at so many clubs now. So many clubs lack leaders now. But yeah, no, just a blatant lie. He never saw me work at any level. So how can he call me a bully? Because he's only seen what other people have seen on the documentary. And that was like three bollockings in 10 months, right? When Frank Clark ripped into people on a weekly basis. If it weren't on the Tuesday, it was on the Saturday. He might have a day off. You know what I mean? And not bollock you on the Tuesday, but you're definitely going to get, someone's going to get a bollocking on the Saturday. And he said, yeah, well, I thought he was a bully. Well, that's because in my book, I told the truth. He'd promised me a 3-year deal. He said, but if I don't see a massive improvement, expect to suffer the consequences. I said, look, he said, you got any ideas? I said, yeah, I've got a portfolio on how the club needs to be. I've made start already, certain areas, on how the club needs to be restructured, what needs to be implemented. And he put a geezer in, which was very undermining, really, called Bernard Goodall. He followed us everywhere. He followed us to the train, or he took us to the training ground. He watched training. No football background, just a company troubleshooter. He was in pre-match team talks, half-time team talks, full-time summaries, and it was totally, I would never stand for it now. But he promised, he said, you suffer the consequences, and I said, fair enough. He said, but I might be looking for a porthole myself. He said, if it don't turn around within the next 18 months, I said, all I want is an idea. Is the time to try and implement what I want, which are my ideas to restructure the club from bottom to top, because it had to be, the foundations had to be put in place. And that was that. But the lie comes in where he never ever saw me work once. He never saw me coach once. He never saw a pre-match briefing, a pre-match meeting, an half-time team talk, or a full. He's only seen what went out on air.
Thing is, did you think when Barry Hearn, because he obviously eyed Pat Holland when he got, did you think he was going to retain you? Did you know he was going to go, like, he's going to?
I thought he was going to. Like I just said, Dan, he promised me a 3-year deal, and then he reneged on it.
3 years, and you.
Yeah, what happened was we got beat at home to Brentford. The door comes crashing open. He walks in. Well, before that, the door had come crashing open because me and Chris Turner used to share the same office. Yeah, and that's all right. Don't bother knocking. And the door came. He said, "Right, I'm the new owner now. The paperwork's done." It was very crass what he said. The other geezer's done his dough. He's out. He said, and with regards to the other members, the other directors, if they don't bring anything to the party, they're not on the board. Which I thought fantastic, because too many had got away with not putting any money into the club. Right. And I said to him, Barry, what you've got to understand, and I've been proved right, because like last year they went 4 million over budget. I said, this club is not an economically viable football club. It's like which is how the documentary came about. I said, we're London's poor relations, and if you drive as the crow flies to the north, you've got Spurs, then Arsenal, and then West Ham are 5 minutes to the east. Then you go through the Blackwall Tunnel. You've got Millwall, then Charlton. Palace and Wimbledon don't really affect you in terms of gate, but those other clubs do, and they're all bigger clubs. So at the time, we thought it might be a good idea to get some exposure for the club. And instead of being a documentary about what was going on behind the scenes and what we were trying to put in place and trying to build and the structure we were trying to put together, it ended up being a documentary about me and about the players that were left behind. And all right, okay, I made mistakes, which I'll own up to. There were people like the best goalkeeper outside of the top division, Paul Hild. I never gave him enough praise or encouragement. I never gave him enough days off, actually. Ian Endon, Gary Bellamy, Darren Pearce, Kevin Austin, rest in peace, Glenn Cockrell, Ian Bogey, Mark Dempsey, Colin West. I never gave him enough praise. I just lumped them all in with the people who had already capitulated, and I regret that because I thought the world of these boys. I really did. And what it is with me, Dan, when I form a bond if I form a relationship with a teammate or a friend, there's an element of love involved, right? And that's how I felt about these players. And I regret to this day what I did, that I never praised them enough. I should have done. And I should have made them exempt because they went above and beyond the call of duty. Then you got morons who I rescued from Spurs, which I won't name. And I gave him an apprenticeship, and then I gave him a 1 year pro deal, and then he's like latter day on the Orient Hour on some Essex radio station. How did we go down? I went, oi, you. I said, I'll tell you how we went down. Basic necessities of a club, like discipline, off the field toxicity, white noise, lack of goals, lack of competition for places. That's how we went down. Too many individual mistakes, too many errors where people had lapses of concentration, not defending as if I did, as if your life depends on it. That's how we went down. So with what I've done for you, and I even took him with me to certain non-league clubs to bump his wages up. I said, mind what you say, son. So now he's part of their TV station because I think he thinks he's going somewhere. But anyway, that's football for you. It's full of look after number one and treachery and all the rest of it.
Mate,
but if you listen, if you say if I say I'm going to stand shoulder to shoulder with you like I did with teammates, and it comes on top, I'm not going to be the one to turn tail and run. I'll stay shoulder to shoulder with you. You understand? And it's sadly lacking, I think, in this day and age. But what happened was I put the final nail in my own coffin. When I had the meeting with Barry Hearn, I said, look, I've got 1 or 2 bits and pieces I want to make. And what frightened him was I wanted a scouting network that was competitive. Like I said, there's an air of resignation. I said, ideally, I want to float. He went, what? I said, I want to float. I want money. I want enough money to be able to offer someone a car so we can sign their kid, or enough money to give someone an envelope like was offered to me by Crystal Palace, by QPR, an inducement by Arsenal, albeit not a lot of money, and it paled into insignificance to what I was offered by QPR and Crystal Palace. I was offered money by someone supposedly representing Leyton Orient, someone supposedly representing Spurs. I said, if you're going to compete and build a club from the bottom up, I said, you've got to be in the marketplace with a decent scouting network. So here's the thing. I want the scouts and the coaches involved at academy level, centre of excellence, which would now be an academy. So if a player signs schoolboy, those people working on him from under 11, I want them to get a little bonus. Yeah, I think it was 250 quid. If they sign apprentice and they're working with them from 14 to 16 and they get offered an apprenticeship, I want them to get 500 quid. If they get to sign pro, I want them to get 750 quid. Because all that work, apart from the weekly expenses or the little wage, which they weren't getting paid, right? So I let all the Sunday morning managers go, bless them, and I got all full coaching badges who I knew on the circuit, and I knew the kids were going to get quality assured information, good work, good light-hearted sessions, full of humour, people like Mickey Payne, people like Stevie Embleton, who was the dad of one of Orient's managers recently, people like this, right? And I gave them, made sure they got a check every month to cover their time. Well, that wasn't the case before, and they were all full badges. And I said, but I want them to get bonuses as kids get signed, academy, schoolboy apprentice, and the scouts as well. Well, it frightened the life out of him because it's all outlay. And he went, Sits, you got to get real. He said, the gate money, it's He said, I want a wage bill, son, of £5,000 a week. He said, I don't care if you have 20 players on 250 quid a week or 10 players on 500 quid a week. I said, well, Barry, if you've got 10 players, it means you ain't got a goalkeeper. He didn't like things like that. You know what I mean? Because he said, well, you know what I mean. I said, yeah, but I knew what he meant. He's trying to do everything on the cheap.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
And the way it's transpired is, from what I'm led to believe, I said to him, there's 13 years left on the lease for the ground. That's the first thing that's got to be addressed. Well, after I left, what happened was he negotiated a new lease on the ground, allegedly 999 years. So there's 969 years left on it because I've been gone 30 years. But it's in his name or in his company's name. And what he does, he rents the pitch back to the first team, right, for them to play their games there, which is a farce. Because the lease of the ground belongs to the football. Like the Emirates belongs to Arsenal. It don't belong to Arteta or the chairman. They don't rent the pitch to the first team. It belongs to the fans and it belongs to Arsenal.
That's it.
Right. So that's been one of my gripes all along. And anyway, I think he gave me a year off when they got relegated non-league, when Edinburgh took them up. He gave me a year off of the rent to make them competitive.
Right.
But with regards to the original point about Patsy Holland, he said, well, who do you want to bring in as your number two? So I was thinking, can't we make use of Glenn Cockrell's wages? He said, have him as a player, assistant manager. I said, he's got no coaching experience. I said, he's very, I said, Glenn's very well respected. He's a good professional. I said, he's a good guy. I said, he'd give you an honest performance. I said, but you need someone detached because I've been through that. I said, I've been trying to coach players who used to be teammates like Terry Howard and Danny Carter and Paul Hild, right? I said, so it's going to be very difficult for him. I said, I want to bring in Pat Holland. He's youth team coach at Spurs at the moment. And I think Vanners was still the boss. I said, he's worked under Terry Venables. I said, and he would have come on. I said, but even when he was here, I worked under him here. I said, we got on really well. We bounced off each other really well. He's a good coach. He's got that West Ham pedigree from John Lyle when he got there and played in the cup final and all the bumfluffery. I said, and we'll bounce off each other. Most importantly, I said, we know each other well enough. I say, Pat's turn it in, or he'll say to me, Sits, and he'll hold me back if I'm going too far. I said, because we've got that kind of. Oh, no, okay. Then we got beat to Brentford. The door comes crashing open, and he says, Sits, there's no easy way to say this. We've got to part company. I've got. You're not high profile enough, regardless of the results. You've managed in a very difficult period, a very difficult era, which no one takes into account. He said, you've been on I didn't nothing, but he said, I've got to bring someone in more high profile. Well, he'd already gone for Billy Bonds, who said a straightforward no,
right?
Allegedly. I found out a story that he'd promised me a deal, and at the same time he was interviewing people behind me back. And that allegedly he interviewed Tony Pulis. He used to have an office at the Waldorf. Yeah, because the cabbies used to come out. You lot having a cup of tea? Does anyone want to do some work? I need to get to Liverpool Street. Right, say that's how he think. That's how he used to carry on. And but Tony Pulis stood up after 4 or 5 minutes and said, anyway, Barry, thanks for your time. This is all alleged. I'm not sure if it can be. He went on to manage Gillingham first before he had relative success at Stoke. And being renowned for difficult to play against at Stoke and upsetting the apple cart and upsetting a few top Johnnies at Stoke. Anyway, he said, Barry, thanks for your time. Where are you going? He said, I thought we was having a meeting. He said, I think we can conclude the meeting, Barry. He said, you don't need a manager. You are the manager. And he walked out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So fair play to him, because he sussed out within 3-4 minutes that he's very hands-on. Translation for control freak.
Yeah, micromanager, control freak.
Yeah, micromanaging thing. But that's open to conjecture. I mean, I didn't have a lot to do with him because while I was trying to go about my daily business, him and his people were going through the books, which is how he come up with the wage bill's got to be £5,000 a week because there's not enough money coming through the gates. So I basically put the final nail in my own coffin. Very, 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 very long-winded answer by saying that I wanted Pat Holland as my number 2. I think he had the job for about 8 months, maybe 9 months, and they sacked him.